What's up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Wraparound, brought to you by the Hockey News. I'm your host, Emma Lingan. I am joined today by Michael Augello and Frank Zawrazky of the Hockey News, coming at you as we do every Tuesday and Thursday to talk about the latest and greatest storylines from around the NHL in bite-sized portions. But before we get into it today, I do want to remind you that for over 75 years, the Hockey News has been the ultimate hockey fix. Now get 12 issues delivered straight to you, packed with stories, stats, and a bonus gift issue to kick things off. Head over to thn.com and get in on the action. All right, y'all, want to start out west today with the Vegas Golden Knights. While the Golden Knights have held on to a playoff spot, they've gone 3-7-0 in their last 10 games. They've been struggling to assert their dominance in the West, especially in a Pacific division, which Connor McDavid referred to earlier this week as a pillow fight of a division. So, for context, the Golden Knights have just one more win right now than the Toronto Maple Leafs do. The Maple Leafs are 10 points out of a spot in the East. So, Mike, what do you think has been the biggest problem for the Golden Knights this season? Do you have any belief that they'll be able to turn things around to be a threat in the playoffs? And before you answer, you're not allowed to say Mitch Marner.
Sorry, I'm breaking the rules already. When you spend $12 million on, never mind. I think it's a multi-pronged problem. First of all, you need a goaltender who can have a save percentage over 900. They have four goalies and none of them do. They tried with Carter Hart. They tried bringing him in. That has been a failure. Aiden Hill has not been the goalie that he was a couple years ago. And Akira Schmid, the Devils didn't think he was somebody who could really handle a heavy workload in the NHL. So they're really having problems in goal. You have to say the Rasmus Anderson deal has not really worked out well for them. He has not played well with them. He's not a big scorer, but he only has 8 points since the trade. And the biggest gap with that team was filling the role of Alex Pietrangelo. He was the leader on the team. I think they miss him terribly. Anderson is not Pietrangelo. He's a good defenseman. I'm questioning whether Vegas will even sign him to a contract extension, where I thought that was a fait accompli. But right now he has played so badly for them, they may let him go to the open market. The Marner addition, he's a fine player. No, but they didn't need to add a Mitch Marner. They needed to add a defenseman or two to replace Pietrangelo. That was the major malfunction of Kelly McCrimmon, and I think they're paying for it right now.
Frank, you agree? Are there any other areas that you see being a problem for this Vegas team right now?
Sure. So I want to harken back to actually one of their rivals out east, and that's the Washington Capitals. And the reason I bring that up is probably the biggest mistake the Vegas Golden Knights have made recently is losing Logan Thompson. Logan Thompson has kept Washington in countless games. Augello hit the nail on the head. You got four goalies on your roster: Lindblom, Hart, Hill, and Schmid, none of which are above 900. In fact, Aiden Hill is ranked 89th out of 94 NHL goaltenders, according to the Hockey News' Ryan O'Hara. And that just says everything. Defense wins championships. And if the Vegas Golden Knights want to get back on top, that starts between the pipes. I would expect a lot more from Carter Hart. Yes, he spent some time off, but at a certain point, chips are down, you're back against the wall. You need to kind of put up or shut up. Somebody has to take control over that goaltending rotation for Vegas. Whether it's Schmid, whether it's Hart, whether it's Hill, somebody has to step up, and the time is now.
Speaking of defense, though, the Detroit Red Wings locked up one of their defensemen, Jacob Bernard-Docker. They agreed to terms on a 2-year contract extension with him. He's 25 years old, 55 games with the Red Wings this season. He's picked up 4 points while averaging 15 minutes of ice time. Red Wings D-core now looks like Mo Seider, Simon Edvinsson, Justin Falk, Ben Sherratt, Travis Hamonic, Albert Johansson, and now Bernard-Docker. So even after acquiring Falk at the trade deadline from St. Louis, Mike, do you think the Red Wings D-core is good enough for them to be considered playoff threats? because this is a team that's kind of been teetering on the edge there for the last few years.
I think they have a fine top pairing with Sider and Edmondson, and then basically you have a bunch of 4s, 5s, and 6s. Bernard Docker, I thought the Sabres made a big mistake with him. They acquired him as part of the Dylan Cousins, Josh Norris deal, and then in the summer, they didn't qualify him, and they allowed him to go as an unrestricted free agent to Detroit. He's a fine defenseman. I think he's a bottom pairing guy. He's right shot, so he has some value there. I don't really trust Steve Yzerman's judgment when it comes to defensemen. He's the one who signed Justin Hall, who's been one of the worst defensemen in the NHL the last few years. He signed him to a 3-year contract 3 years ago, and that was a dismal failure. The Ben Sherratt extension from earlier in the season, he's a solid veteran. But if you look at that defense, I mean, really, you've got Sider and Edmondson probably playing 24, 25 minutes a night, playing all the offensive zone starts. And then the rest of the defense is really average. Sandin Pellikka is going to be really good, but I think he's a year or two away. So they're trying to bridge the gap. And signing Bernard Docker is basically another gap bridger.
Frank, what do you think? Do you think the Red Wings really kind of have what it takes to have a playoff caliber defensive core? Or do you think they still need a little more work?
I'm going to expand upon what Augello said here. I believe the Red Wings have a really good top pairing, but aside from that, there's a real dichotomy, a real divergence from what the offensive side of the puck is for Detroit and what the defensive side of the puck. Like Augello said, they're good, solid defensive players, but they're not going to be wheeling and dealing the puck up the ice like other playoff teams. So I think it's okay, but I think there's a little bit of I don't want to say identity crisis between the offense and the defense, but I want to say that there is some disparity between what the offensive speed is and what the defensive speed is. And that could catch up to them in the postseason, especially when you need your depth guys to step up.
Well, we will have to see what happens here down the stretch with Detroit. Going back to the West, though, I want to talk about the Utah Mammoth. The Mammoth have been the 8th best team. They've had the 8th best record in the entire NHL since January 1st. They've gone 19, 10, and 3 during that time. They have a 3-point lead for the top wildcard spot in the Western Conference, with Nashville now occupying that second spot. So it would be just the second time in the last 13 seasons that the Arizona-Utah franchise would have made the playoffs if they do stay in that spot or stay in the playoff race here. But expectations this year would definitely be the highest they've been in that time frame for this team. So, Mike, if you could think of maybe one positive and one negative that the Mammoth have going for them right now that could help or hurt them in the postseason, what would you kind of focus in on?
Well, the positive for them is up front, they're dynamic offensively and they're deep. I mean, you've got, they added Peterka in the trade in the offseason, and you've got Keller and Gunther and Schmaltz. I mean, they're really deep up front, and Logan Cooley, I think, is a star in the making. So offensively, I think they could hold their own with with teams like Anaheim and Edmonton in the Pacific if that's the way the matchup happens in the first round. Conversely, their blue line, and even with adding Mackenzie Weegar, I think is average at best. You got Weegar and you got Sergachev, and then Sean Durzi is a decent offensive defenseman, but it really drops off after that. And I think they have Simashev coming in a year or two, but right now I think their defense is what may hold them back from taking a step to the next level.
Frank, you agree?
I agree, but I'd also like to add an additional positive, because Augello covered most of what I was going to say, and I've got 2 words for you guys. Michael Hrabal. Michael Hrabal, goaltender from University of Massachusetts, signed his entry-level contract this year. Having seen what he did on a Omaha Lancers USHL team that has been and consistently is towards the most in the league USHL-wise in shots on goal, and UMass, he's weathered the storm, helped build that team up. I really am excited to see what he can do for Utah, because they don't really have a bona fide number 1 netminder. They have Vejmelka, who's good, but he's not going to lead you to the promised land. And Vitek Vanacek is a solid backup. You bring in you bring in Michael Hrabel, who has seen a lot of action at the junior level, a ton of action at the professional level, and you bring him up and slowly integrate him down the stretch. Seeing what he did in juniors in college, I am really excited to see what he is capable of at the professional level.
Well, interesting times in Utah. Like we said, high expectations now, but in a very tough central division right now. They've got Minnesota, Colorado, Dallas all ahead of them. So still looking to make some noise here in the playoffs. But want to switch gears a little bit here and want to talk about the Philadelphia Flyers. Of course, they started out the season strong, but they had a tough stretch at the start of the calendar year, and that has left them now 5 points out of a playoff spot in the East. They're in danger of missing the playoffs now for a 6th straight season. Still some time, but not much before the end of the season here to make up that gap. But Mike, what do you think the Flyers' biggest weakness is right now, and what's preventing them from staying consistently in the playoff race throughout an entire season? Because obviously, if you look at this year, new coach, kind of new system, but again, these issues that they're having are not unique to this season.
I think their main weakness has been a lack of direction in the franchise, where Danny Briere, their general manager, has mentioned the word rebuild the last 3 years, and they just don't rebuild. They, under Tortorella and under Tocchet, it's sort of a faux rebuild, or just because they're trying to make the playoffs. You can't do both things at once. Either you're rebuilding, and I'm not saying tear it down to the studs, but you're either rebuilding and you're giving young players a chance, or you're trying to make the playoffs. And a 37-year-old Luke Glendening does not belong on your roster if you're rebuilding. So, I mean, if you're talking about positionally, their main weakness, and they've tried to address it, but I think sort of half-handedly or haphazardly, sorry, I'm butchering English today, is up the middle. Sean Couturier was a great player, but I think injury-wise, he's flawed. They added Trevor Zegras. He could be the worst defensive center in the NHL, even though he's brilliant offensively. They drafted Jet Luchenko. I don't know whether he is going to be a good NHLer. They've tried to address it, and adding a center in the free agent or trade market is the most difficult thing to do. So I don't know if they can fast track this, but there are a lot of weaknesses in the Flyers. There's a lot of positives. They have some good players, but there are a lot of weaknesses as well.
Yeah, Philadelphia does seem like one of those teams, Frank, that they're constantly preaching patience from the front office. It's like we're 3 years away from being 3 years away is kind of what it starts to feel like. So when you look at this team, what are some of the biggest issues that you see in terms of their inability to keep themselves in a playoff race for the majority of the season?
It all starts between the pipes for me. It really does. And Dan Vladar is a good goalie. He's a solid 1A, 1B kind of goalie. He's not a sensational netminder. And if you look at the numbers, because I'm all about the numbers here, Vladar has a .907 save percentage. That's very respectable. But he's got no one to lean on, no one to help him out. Samuel Ersson, .864 through 28 games. I mean, that's all you really need to hear. And the only other goalie they have is Alexei Kosolov, .830 through 4 games. So I think they need help in net to kind of bolster up what issues are coming down the middle. You could have the greatest offensive team. I think we kind of talked a little bit about it with Vegas earlier in the show. You could have a lot of offensive stars, but if you don't have good goaltending, you're going to go way down in the standings. And with a good goaltender in Vladar, .907 respectable, but an .864 save percentage through 28 games for Ersson, that's where I think a lot of the problems lie, because they're overloading Vladar.
Well, as we mentioned, unfortunately for the Flyers, they have fallen out of the playoff race, at least as of now. Another team that has fallen far out of the playoff race in the East is the Toronto Maple Leafs. However, bright spot for them this season, especially of late, has been Easton Cowan. So in his rookie year, Cowan has put up 22 points in 57 games. He's had a major uptick in his ice time ever since Austin Matthews has been out of the lineup with injury. He's playing over 18 minutes per game now over the last 3 games, and he's playing on the top line between or alongside John Tavares and William Nylander. So while the Leafs are likely going to have some drastic changes to their lineup over the next few seasons here, Mike, do you think Cowan has shown in this short time, again, admittedly, it is a small sample size, but do you think he's shown that his time in the NHL that he can be a pivotal part of this team's future?
I do. I think he, we know his junior record. We know he, won everything, including a Memorial Cup in his final year in junior. And it's a situation where I think the treatment and the application of him at the NHL level is exhibit A of why Craig Berube is going to end up without a job, because they played him on the 4th line. They played him on the 3rd line with a couple guys like Dakota Joshua and Nick Waugh, who are not particularly offensive players. Only when they were completely out of it had they moved him into the top 6. And the most glaring thing of all was around the Olympic break. They healthy scratched him before the Olympic break, could not send him down to the minors because they played him too many games before the break, and then healthy scratched him after. So he was out for basically a month. He was healthy, but he was not played. That's absurd for a 20-year-old player. He needs to play in the American Hockey League, or he needs to be in the lineup. But when he's been in the lineup, he's been very effective, now playing in an offensive role. And even more important than that, after Austin Matthews got hit by Radko Gudas, Cowan was on the ice. He's the only one that you could forgive because he's a 20-year-old kid. The other players, the veterans who tuck-tailed and ran when Matthews was on the ice injured. John Tavares was hit in the game against Boston earlier this week, and a 6-foot, 185-pound Cowan jumped on 6'7" Nikita Zadorov. That's what you need, and this kid learned his lesson. And I'm not saying he's going to be a leader because he's only 20 years old, but that he led by example in that respect. And I think that more of that is needed in Toronto.
Frank, what do you make of what Cowan has done this season? How important do you think his success is going to be to the success of the Maple Leafs moving forward?
That's a really good question. And I want to harken back to a question we had on the Wraparound a few weeks ago about Matthew Knies and his future in Toronto. And I think Knies and Cowan are the cornerstones that this Leafs team needs to build around. I like Austin Matthews. I hope he stays in Toronto for the fans' sake. But I don't think he's the guy you want to build everything around. He's been around for a number of years. He's a solid player. He's the captain of your team. You expect he's going to be there. But you want to build around the young talent. Look at what Chicago did. Now, I'm not saying Cowan is Connor Bedard, but you look at what they did with a guy like Connor Bedard, Frank Nazar. The Blackhawks did an excellent job building around him, getting guys in the draft, getting guys in free agency. In fact, Tyler Bertuzzi, one of those guys. I think you could use a veteran on a line with someone like Cowan or guy like Knies, someone to guide them, someone to help usher in the next generation, the next era of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Whatever happens with Coach Berube, I'm not privy to those details, but whatever does happen, Cowan and Knies are the future of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they will be there unless something happens, we'll say.
Well, they will be there unless GM Brad Treliving trades him, which is another reason why Brad Treliving's job may be on the line, because there was a lot of talk at the deadline about Matthew Knies being shopped. And I mean, he's a 23-year-old power forward. You just can't trade guys like that. But back to Cowan, he says he wants to model his game after Brandon Hagel. And, Hagel's not the biggest player in the world. He's got a motor that doesn't quit. That's the reason why Tampa Bay traded a couple first-round picks to get him from Chicago, and that trade has paid off massively for them. I mean, and the Leafs really need that kind of spark plug. I mean, they haven't had that kind of guy since Darcy Tucker, and that's a long time ago. They really need Cowan, especially since they don't have the benefit like Chicago did of drafting players with high first-round picks because they've traded 2 of them. They need Cowan and some of the youngsters that haven't gotten an opportunity under Berube to get a chance and to play. And hopefully, with a change in the organization, management, and coaching, those young players will get an opportunity going forward.
Hopefully they will. For a team like Toronto in the position that they're in, that's kind of, I think, how you would measure success for the rest of the season on a team like that, getting those young guys the opportunity here in Toronto. Now, elsewhere in Ontario, the Ottawa Senators have a lot of their core locked up now for multiple seasons. They also don't have a single player earning more than $8.5 million, but one player who is eligible for an extension on July 1st is Drake Batherson. So Batherson's put up over 20 goals and 60 points in his last 4 seasons. He's been the best points per game in his career this year. So, Mike, what do you think Batherson's price tag is going to be, especially with the cap going up? And what's the AAV number that the Senators should be comfortable with offering him when they are negotiating his next contract?
Well, we know that going forward with the cap going up, it's not going to be the amount, not going to be the AAV. It's going to be percentage. It's going to be percentage of the salary cap. So undoubtedly, they will try to keep him under Tim Stützle and under Brady Tkachuk, which is a little over $8 million. I can't see a guy. I mean, he's never hit 40. So I can't see him asking for $8 million. I don't think he's going to get it from them. If he tries to go down that road, they'll say, thank you very much, and go and test the open market. So I think, if you're talking about a max 7-year deal, which that would be with the new CBA, I'd say probably 7.5 to 7.75. And I think probably he should be thankful to get that. But if he puts up a 40 goal a year going into unrestricted free agency, if they want to basically let him bet on himself, he could get more on the open market, because we know free agency basically is dead now, because, this year Alex Tuch is the only unrestricted free agent, and I don't even know who the heck is after that. So he could hit a higher amount, but I think in that 7.5 to 7.75 range is probably the sweet spot.
Frank, is that what you think?
I think that's a little high for me. I would say around 6.75 to 7. And the reason I would say that is that the Senators are trying to build something sustainable. Remember that buzzword of sustainability. You don't want to end up like the Toronto Maple Leafs, where you have a bunch of your cap space in 4 guys and they all sputter out in the playoffs, and then you're dead in the water. You want to have flexibility within the cap. Batherson's a great player, but like you said, Augello, he hasn't put up 40. I think 6.75 to 7.25 would be what I would ask for if I were him, and I think that could be pretty amicable for the Senators. It's a team-friendly deal. It allows for the Senators to get the depth to make the team sustainable in the playoffs. So that's what I would ask for if I'm Batherson. You don't want to go crazy, but you want to make sure the player is compensated for their efforts, and Batherson has been an important part, and that's where I get the number that I am.
Yeah, the difference, though, because you use the Leafs as an example, that when they had 4 players making $40 million, that was post-COVID, and that was when the cap was essentially frozen. Now you've got the cap potentially going up to $120 million in the next 2 or 3 years. And if you're going to say we're going to pinch pennies and you're limited to making 6.75 to 7, he'll say, okay, I'll go and make 8, 8.5, or 9 from some team as an unrestricted free agent. I think they have to meet him halfway, and they have all their players locked up. Tkachuk, Sanderson, Stützle. If they want to lock him up, a player in his mid-20s who's a consistent scorer, they're going to have to pay him a little more than what you're recommending.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. We've got uncharted territory here with the new CBA kicking in, the cap going up, these new contracts being signed. Although, like Mike said, kind of took the wind out of our sails a little bit already by all of the big name free agents already kind of signing their extensions, but still a few names like Batherson to keep an eye on as we head into the off season. But Frank, since we have you here today, do you want to wrap up today talking about the Hobey Baker Award? The 10 finalists were named last week. Of course, Hobey Baker, college hockey's most prestigious award. The 10 names are going to be whittled down to 3 finalists on April 3rd. So the 10 names, some familiar names in there, guys like James Higgins, Gavin McKenna, names that, hockey fans are pretty familiar with. But in your opinion, Frank, who do you think the 3 finalists are going to be out of the 10 who were announced last week?
I'll do you one better. I'll predict the winner, and it's going to be Ethan Wittenbach by a landslide. I actually just wrapped up an opinion piece on the NCAA site as to why it's not even close that Wittenbach gets it. I mean, just look at the holistic nature of the Hobey Baker. You look at character. This is a guy that even when he was dealing with a significant lower body injury last year in Sioux Falls, was going out to the soup kitchen, volunteering, running youth hockey practices, and has continued that sort of community work at Quinnipiac. Now, you want to look at production? I got production for you. 58 points, flies past the competition. That point figure, 58 points, 6 better than Gavin McKenna, 10 higher than Max Plant. And mind you, his 2 closest nominees are those 2 guys in production-wise. You look at points per game, Wittenbach leads the NCAA with over 1.5 points per game, 1.53 to be exact. Wittenbach has really impressed me, and having watched him over the years evolve and grow on and off the ice as a leader and as a guy who can galvanize his teammates with swagger, poise, and intensity, Wittenbach is the holistic best player in college hockey. Has he scored the most goals in college hockey? No. Has he been the leader in assists in college hockey? No. But if you're looking at the totality of what makes a college hockey player the best in the country, you look at community, you look at character, you look at skill on the ice. Wittenbach runs away with all 3 of those. And the other 2 nominees, I would say it's McKenna and TJ Hughes. McKenna, obviously, doing a lot of great things in production. And TJ Hughes, the captain at the University of Michigan, not a name a lot of people outside the college hockey world will know. Did a really good job in his draft plus 1 year, put up 127 points in 60 AJHL games with the Brooks Bandits, now part of the BCHL. But TJ Hughes will be a guy that I like going into the professional level. I see a lot of parallels between him and Quinn Hudson. I think he could actually be in the same organization as Quinn Hudson at some point. I think Edmonton may have their eye on him. Again, that's speculation, but that would be a good fit for him. But going back to Ethan Wittenbach, if he doesn't win the award, I would be absolutely stunned.
All right, so it's Hughes, Wittenbach, and McKenna are your 3 finalists. Mike, what do you think? Do you agree with those 3?
I'll yield to Frank's expertise on Wittenbach, and I think McKenna and Hughes are likely to be 2, 3. If not, I'd have to put in Higgins in there just because Higgins has had a very good year, and now is playing in Providence. I'll just say this: Hughes is a unsigned, undrafted college free agent. Frank said Edmonton, there's a lot of talk. He's from Hamilton. There's a lot of talk about Toronto, who has really pursued undrafted college free agents the last few years. And they're anxious to make some changeovers on their roster. He would get an opportunity. He might get an opportunity playing on a line with John Tavares or Austin Matthews. So that's always a attractive piece to offer a player. So I think he had a great year at Michigan, and but McKenna is going to get nominated. There's no way he doesn't.
Well, we will see. Of course, the 3 finalists are going to be revealed on April 3rd. In the meantime, if you want to read any more about the Hobey Baker Award, the finalists, any of the teams or players or topics that we've talked about today here on the Wraparound, of course, you can head over to the Hockey News. It's been the go-to for all things hockey since 1947. 12 issues packed with game and player insights, plus a free issue to start. It's a must-have for any fan. Head to thn.com/free and grab your subscription today. That is going to do it for today's episode of the Wraparound. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in, listened to us talking some hockey. We really do appreciate it. We will be back with an all-new episode next week. But for now, for Michael Augello and Frank Zawrazky, I'm Emma Lingan. This is the Wraparound, and we will see you next time.